Good afternoon. Can you hear me okay? Hey, Joy. Hi, Joy. How you doing?
Hey, good afternoon.
Hey, Jason. How you doing? Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I can hear you good.
Good, good, good.
Can you hear me?
Yep, I can hear you.
Oh, hi.
Long time. How you been?
I'm good. How have you been? How's the new baby?
Oh my gosh. The baby is doing very well. I'm very happy to report that.
Oh,
Yeah, you know, other than the, you know, lowered amount of sleep, you know.
I know. Just a few more months.
Yeah, I know, right?
Yeah.
10-hour effective we are with training him. But man, yeah, he's doing great. He's getting chubby already.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I've been trying to get family photos done. I have to return some stuff, but I'm like anxious because he literally changes every day. So it's like I'm trying to get the newborn photo, but it's like the longer I delay, the so
Yeah, they used to do those things in the hospital, but
yeah,
that changed. Yeah.
yeah. They was so convenient. It just came. They didn't care if you were nappy. But now that I'm doing it myself, I'm trying to get everything right, and it's taking too long. So, anyways, I'll figure it out.
Am I the only one here?
No. We got Jason on the call and Koku. I don't recognize that name, but glad you can join us, Koku, if you're listening.
Okay, can I get recording for the last one?
Yes, I know. I plan to post the entire webinar series, so yeah,
Okay.
I'll be making an announcement on that as well.
Thank
All right, so we're gonna get started, guys, because I know your time is precious and it's Sunday. Y'all don't want to sit here with me all day, even though we're talking about some good stuff. So we're gonna get right into it. I know there's only a few people here. Jason, if you have an extra finger, if you don't mind just pinging Rael, see where she's at. I'd appreciate that. Appreciate you, man. So yeah, guys, what are we doing? We are on our part 2 of our webinar series of how to basically become a security control assessor and how to do a good job at assessing a network. Previously, in the last episode of the SCA Webinar Series, we talked about SAP, right? Security Assessment Plan, which is basically, and we went through that document detail. Enough detail, I think, to discuss, the context and discuss how you put this in context. Now you take a template and you modify it to become your document, right? Well, today we're going to get right into the actual assessment portion. All right, so let me go ahead and start by sharing my screen with you all. Okay, and I'm going to figure out what I'm doing because, yeah. So the first thing I'm going to do is download the security assessment report template. So I'm going to go to FedRAMP for that. Okay, and I want a security assessment report, so I'm going to type in SAR. It's our acronym for security assessment reports. And here we have the template, so I'm going to go ahead and download that. Oh, shit. Yes, dang, I still don't have Microsoft Word. This is awesome. Jason, you mind driving again?
Yes, sir. That's good to go.
Awesome. If you don't mind, let me stop sharing. Boy, sorry about that.
Oh, good.
I just apparently I still don't have the right stuff. Make sure I test it today. So Jason Moore, most panelists. Yeah, so just share your screen and go to FedRAMP. Go to FedRAMP templates for us when you're ready.
Okay.
I need to stop sharing. And I'm going to, I thought I had downloaded yesterday. Apparently I was waiting for a prompt. All right, I see everybody's rolling in. I see Chris is on again. Hey, Chris, Woodson. See who else from yesterday. Okay, there's Rael. Mike is here as well. So we got some new faces. Oh, Lucy's joining us today. Hey, Lucy. Jennifer is on today. Hey, Jennifer. Glad you could join. Mario, Mato, glad you guys can join us. Johnson, Belange. All right. All right, so Jason, yeah, go ahead and go to the FedRAMP template website for me, please.
All right.
By a show of hand, if you guys don't mind, how many people here on the call today actually know RMF step 1 through 3? Like you're familiar with it. If I say something like SSP or writing implementation statements or secure categorization, if those words make sense to you, let me see a show of hand, please. All right. Okay. It's about half of you guys. By show of hand, if those words makes absolutely no sense, you're like, what? Scooby-Doo, where are you? Let me see a show of hand if you're just kind of lost in the sauce on RMF step 1 through 3. Okay. All right. Well, I'm going to guess that everybody knows it. Those that have said that they do know it, and the ones and everybody else is not voting. So that's going to be my assumption. Silence is compliance in my world. So Jason, back to you, man. Let's go ahead and look for the security assessment report. So do a Control F for me, please. Oh yeah, I hate using those. Don't use that. It never works out. Maybe it works for you, but do a Control F if you don't mind, to save us some time. And then type in SAR, SAR. Yeah, I don't like using their search button. All right, and so we have do another search drop down. Yep. There we go. Security assessment report template. Go ahead and download that for me, please, sir. Thank you, sir. That's interesting. All right, so this is the SAR template, right? So a very good template because it basically walks you through everything you need in order to submit a security assessment report. All right, just like we did yesterday with a SAP, you simply, update the cover page. And if you scroll down to the table of content, I'd like to kind of just browse through that real quick.
All right, I'm gonna go ahead and download it and get it.
Right. Oh, we're not gonna edit it. Sorry, I should probably maybe start out with that. So we could just scroll through this one. We're not gonna edit.
All right, cool. Let me know if you need me to zoom in anymore.
I appreciate it. And let's go to the table of content for this one. All right, right there, please. All right, so, they talk about a lot of different things in this document. They go through methodologies, they go through a lot of risk information, right? They basically walk you through, they guide you through a lot of the things, and then you insert certain information into this document. I personally, for those that are trying to learn how to do assessment, I personally don't think you should start off with this document, right? I think, once you used to assessing and you want to enhance your assessment capability, if you're going through a FedRAMP process, of course you have to use the template. But quite frankly, I'd rather get to the meat and potatoes. And I think you guys like meat and potatoes. I don't think anybody here really likes the vegetables that much. So I'm going to go right into the actual assessment, which is the test, the auditing, right? That's what we want to do. So let's get right into that, right? There is an appendix. There's reference in this document where it says Appendix B, Security Test Case Procedure Template. That really and truly is where your meat and potato is. That really and truly is where the things you test, you write your results for, right? I say all this to say, I'm going to ignore this template. And in my evolution of doing security assessment, I've learned that that spreadsheet is really what I need to use, right? These are good. They complement the assessment process, but I'm not going to use it. we're gonna go right to the security case, test case procedure. So Jason, if you don't mind, let's go back to the FedRAMP template website. And what I would like for you to do is do a search for test case. All right, and scroll down a little bit. So you can see here, there's 3 of them, right? There's one for a moderate system, there's one for a low system, and there's one for a high system, all right? This gets a little tricky if you don't know about security categorization, RMF step 1. Remember, assessment, the purpose of this webinar is step 4. So if you don't know step 1 through 3, this might get a little tricky. So I'll say this. In step 1, you categorize the system and you determine if it's low, moderate, or high, right? Once you make that determination, it trickles down into the amount of security control you're writing statements for, and it ultimately trickles down to what controls you're testing against, right? So for the purpose of this exercise, we're gonna download the moderate security test case procedure template, please. All right. I want to pause right there. Jason, is everything I'm saying making sense to you so far?
So far, so good with me.
Good, good. I'm glad to hear. All right. Does anyone on the call, are we good? Is everybody still on the bus? Do I need to stop the bus and pick you back up? Okay, I'm gonna assume everybody's on the bus. All right. Oh, let's see. Woodson got his hand up. Woodson, you have your hand up? Or is that from the earlier data call?
Can you hear me?
Woodson, yes, sir, I can hear you.
Okay. I wasn't able to get heard yesterday, but I just wanted to make sure that you're able to hear me if I had any questions.
Okay, good, good. I'm glad you you spoke up. So thanks for that.
Thank you very much.
You bet. Happy to have you. All right. Cool, man. Let's do this, Jason. So as you guys are seeing, there's a spreadsheet. Unfortunately, FedRAMP does not have the Rev 5 yet. They're still working on it. I don't know how long it's going to take them to get it ready. But Rev 4 is really what they have. And in case you have a question mark, Rev 4 was basically a slightly different set of security controls. Rev 5 is they added a few things and they reworded a few things. That's just the summary of it all. But controls is control, right? So that's the version that we're looking at right now. I would like for us to pick a security control family, and then we'll go through the columns in that one. So any particular one you like, Jason?
AU.
AU? I knew you was gonna say that.
I know you did. You want me to download this one, or are we just still viewing it?
Oh yeah. So it's just a cover page. Honestly and truly, we don't need to worry about that. Let's go to the AU tab, please. All right, so let's go ahead and zoom in just a little bit, if you don't mind. Yeah, a little bit more, one more should do it. Yep, perfect. Okay, spreadsheets are a pain sometimes, right? You gotta really find your chi. You gotta meditate sometimes. It'll drive you nuts. You gotta click in there, click in here, or whatever. First, let's go ahead and make sure this is in edit mode. Jason, please.
All right.
Up top where it says viewing. Yep. Oh, let's edit. Oh, yeah, you gotta download it.
Yeah, I think I gotta download it.
Yeah. Great. All right, let's go back to the AU group. And then, yep, perfect. All right, so what I like to do is I like to kind of set my stuff up right here, because if you scroll to the right, it's going to push everything to the left. What I would like to do is freeze pane out of freeze pane.
Okay.
All right, so click on E2, the E2 block. Click on it for me. And then go to view. And then go to freeze pane, which is right in the middle on the tab, next to arrange all. Yep, you're getting closer. All right, click there for me, the drop down, and then click unfreeze pane. I don't know where they froze it, but we want to unfreeze it. And then click on freeze pane again. And then click on freeze pane one more time. Yep, now scroll to the right Yeah. So now what I've effectively did was I don't need to see everything. You know what I'm saying? I want to see the assessment objective, right? And that's where I want to freeze paint. So that's good. All right, guys. So let's take a look at this spreadsheet. Let's make sense of it. All right. We have the control name, right? Which is equivalent to the same control name as in the SSP. Jason, don't mean to put you on the spot. Do you have an SSP open at the moment or available within reach? Maybe even your SSP.
It should be hard to get to. Give me 1 second.
Yeah. It'd be good to kind of do a side-by-side comparison here so people can relate. Interesting. Microsoft won't let me download my own product. I hope some of you guys are going to be able to enjoy this weather if you're local in the PG County area. But it's what, 60 degrees today?
It's beautiful for sure.
It's nice, man. As soon as I get out of here, I'm gonna take my family out. I don't know where we're gonna go, but it's gonna be outdoors.
I'm seeing if I can get a faster way to open it. And you want the SSP that I created, not the.
Yeah, we'll look at the one you created. Let's just go straight to your security controls, would you? The AU security controls. Yeah, you can probably go to navigation pane. Let me show you an easier way. So exit out of there, go to view, and then go to navigation pane. Yep, navigation. There you go. And that gives you, then scroll down, and then you see the AU. There you go. Click on it. Yep, perfect. All right. So I don't know if you can do a side by side if you're able to do that.
Yeah, let's get rid of this.
All right. So if you guys are looking, on the left is your SAR, your Secure Assessment Report. On your right is your SSP, your System Security Plan, right? So on the left, you see Audit and Accountability Policies and Procedure, right? That is the control name. Same thing on your SSP, right? To recap what we talked about yesterday, the SSP is how you plan to secure the network, right? And the SAR is proven that you are in fact complying with those security requirements, right? So essentially what they've done in the SAR, the left side of your screen, is broke down those security requirements and say, okay, individually prove this, individually prove that. You're proving every facet of the control requirement, right? So you see how AU1, which is the first control, Audit and Accountability Policies and Procedures, is a title, right? And the control ID is all AU1, column B, is all AU1 all the way down through. Well, to your right side is AU1, right? However, there's a slight difference. AU1 1 1 and an AU1 1 2 AU, and then but on the left you have AU1 A11 A1 1 2, right? And the reason is because we'll start with AU1 AU1 1, right? On your right side of the SSP, AU1 1 is there's actually 3 different questions that they're asking you based on that, right? I'm going to give you guys an example. So AU11 says the organization develops, documents, and disseminates to defined personnel a policy. Oh, no, you're going too far.
Sorry, nah, this is, I think the rest of the document loaded. I wasn't even on the mouse. It just moved.
Okay, I got you. All right, so let me read that part to you guys again, right? The organization develop, documents, and disseminate to organization-defined personnel or roles an audit and accountability policy that addresses purpose, scope, roles, responsibility, management commitment, coordination among organizational entities, and compliance, right? The first step to even assessing this is to make sure it makes sense to you. If it doesn't, don't go any further till it does, right? And what they're simply asking is, does the organization, in this case, does PJ Pros, do we develop, document, and disseminate, right, to certain people, right? Do we have a document? And what is that document? Well, part one says an audit and accountability policy, right? And that policy should, inside that policy, if you open up that document, which we have, it should have a section that says purpose. It should have a section that says scope, roles, responsibility. It should have a section that addresses what the managers are committed to. It should have a section that talks about how we coordinate among different organizational entities. It should have a section that talks about what compliance means. AU11 pretty much is asking all of those things. Do you have that document? Do you have a document that you've developed? And do you disseminate it to certain people, right? And in addition, does the content of that document, does it have purpose, scope, roles, responsibility, et cetera, right? That's AU11. There's a lot in AU11. So in the SAR, let's go to the left side of the screen. In the SAR, they've broken it out into multiple facets. AU1A11 says, determine if the organization has an audit and accountability policy that has purpose, role, scopes, responsibility. They grouped up all those different sections. Determine if you have that, right? That's AU11. They're not talking about dissemination, right? They're not talking about, they're not talking about dissemination. They're not talking about anything else. They're just talking about, do you have that document? Does it have those sections in it, right? And that's what AU11 is asking. Now, AU1A12, right, is asking, determine if the organization defines personnel or roles to whom the policy is being disseminated. So now, AU1A12 is not asking about if you have all those sections. They don't care about that for AU1A12. They're asking, do you disseminate? Disseminate, by the way, means to hand out. Do the right people get those documents, right? So 1.2 is asking, do you actually define? And you have to pay attention to the word define. Define means, is it written somewhere, right? Is it written in an official document that says, hey, any PJ Pros audit and accountability policy must be disseminated to all the ISOs, or must be disseminated to every single employee, or must be disseminated. It needs to be defined. It needs to be written somewhere that says that audit and accountability policy must be disseminated to, it can be anywhere. It needs to be an official document, right? And that's what that second part is talking about. The third part, if you notice, is very similar to the second part. The second assessment procedure, which says, determine if the organization disseminates the audit and accountability policy to organization defined personnel. The action here is, do you actually do it, right? 1.2 is asking, is it written somewhere about who the document is disseminated to? 1.3 is asking, do you actually disseminate it? Like, you could write it all day, but do you actually do it? Not only should you have it written, you should also do it. So if you have it written, but you're not doing it, 1.2 will pass, but 1.3 will fail. And if you're doing it, but you didn't have it written somewhere, well, then 1.3 will pass and 1.2 will fail, right? So,
hey, Paul, I think we got a hand up.
Huh?
I think we got a hand up. I don't know if it's a new hand.
Oh, thanks.
Yep.
Hi, Jones. Mensa. I don't know if that's your first name. Jones?
Yeah, Jones is my first name.
Hey, Jones, what's going on? How are you?
Yeah, I was just wondering if you can have, because I just opened up our FedRAM. I was thinking maybe if you can make it larger.
Oh, you mean zoom in?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, we're gonna deep dive into the SAR in just a second. I just want to make sure that people can cross-reference the two for now. But yeah, well, I'll definitely I'll zoom into the one document very shortly.
Okay, thank you.
You bet. Right. So I want to make sure that you guys have pictured, you have it pictured in your mind how the two correlate, right? Because, and if you scroll down to your implementation statement, Jason, for this control, right? So Jason have written part A all together, right? It's all in one piece, right? So he's included part A1 and part A2, right? And it has the information written in there. As the assessor, it is up to you to first read the implementation statement. If the implementation statement says that all documents are disseminated to the CISO and the ISOs, right? You shouldn't be looking for evidence that shows that the documents are disseminated to the HR manager and the authorizing official. Those are two different roles, right? The signed implementation statement from the SSP is what you are assessing for. Now, if the implementation statement was too vague and you're not able to follow, and it doesn't give you the direct answer on what you should be testing for, in that case, then you need to have a conversation with your ISO. I'm going to pause real quick. Woodson, you have a question?
Yes, I do. Just want to make sure I'm on the same page. The 1.1, 1.2 are considered enhancements, correct?
No, those are not necessarily enhancement. Enhancements is like more like 1.1 on the SSP. 1.1 and 1.2, these are more assessment procedures, right? Each yep. What you're thinking is like AU5 might have AU5.1. Those are enhancements because they relate to AU5. Okay.
Thank you.
You bet. So yeah. So it's very important that you stick to the implementation statement, and when you're doing your assessment, that is your first source of truth. If that signed SSP got past the reviewers and it wasn't specific enough, then you need to have a conversation with the ISO on, and they need to be able to tell you how to prove it because the statement didn't say so, right? It's not up to you to try to look for answers, right? I mean, to try to make up answers is for them to tell you how they comply with it. All right, let's go into the, let's go ahead and zoom in on the SAR, please. And then we can actually do some practice with our SAR. All right, so let's go back to the first one, AU1A11. Who was it again? Was it Johnson? Johnson, is this good? Give me a thumbs up or chime in. This is a good font size for you.
Yeah, I guess. That's fine.
That's fine? You want to make it larger? Is that better?
Are you going to have a recording after this?
Are we going to what?
Do you have a recording of
yeah, we're recording right now.
All right, cool. I like yesterday's too. All right, that'll be fine. I'll start to pay more attention after the class.
Okay. Yeah, if there's one thing about my classes, you definitely don't want to miss anything. Come with your coffee and your energy drinks. Yeah, so if we're looking at this assessment objective to kind of recap, right? AU1A11, right, is basically talking about, I got an audit and accountability policy. Does it have purpose, scope, roles, responsibility, audit commitment, coordination among entities, compliance, right? You're the security control assessor. If you recall yesterday, Jason, right, we talked about 3 ways to examine. I got to put Jason on the spot. He's used to me putting him on the spot. There's 3 ways I can test for this. What are the 3 options, Jason?
Those are going to be to either examine. Oops, I'm on mute. No, all right.
Yep.
Sorry. Either examine, which is reviewing the documents to see if something's actually written, or interview, meeting with someone of authority to collect that information from, or performing a technical test where you're actually testing it yourself.
Bingo. On spot, man. On the spot. Very good. So those are my 3 options. Now, this is one of the reasons why I love FedRAMP. They make these templates so easy. If you look to your right of this assessment objective, they have examine, right? And they actually tell you, hey, these are things that we suggest you should test for, right? They say, hey, how about you go grab an audit accountability policy and procedure, or any other document for that matter? Well, duh, right? Because what we're looking for is the assessment objective, right? The assessment objective is saying, does that document have purpose, scope, roles, responsibility, et cetera, right? That's what they're asking for, right? And the examine part is saying, well, go check the document, right? They're giving you an advice on what to look for. But then the next column, Jason, interview, that's grayed out. You know why that's grayed out? Because
they don't recommend using that for that part.
Yeah, it's kind of like, hey, Paul, you just wrote a book. Does your book have a preface in it? right? And then you wait for me to tell you, yes, it has a preface. When you can just open the book and see if it's got a preface in it, right? It doesn't make sense to FedRAMP for you to do an interview in order to prove this assessment objective, okay? Let's go to the right and let's see the third box, the technical test. It doesn't make sense to run a technical test. This is not a technical question. The objective is not technical at all. They're simply asking you, does a document have those sections in them? Okay, so Jason, you're the assessor, right? We've already talked about the system, right? You know about the system. You have the system SSP. What is the first thing you do when you want to test AU1A11?
First thing would be to go ahead and examine relevant documents and records to understand if this stuff is actually written.
That's a great question, Jason, but I tricked you. That's the wrong answer. Go to your implementation statement. It's a great answer. I hope I didn't discourage you with that. It makes perfect sense. But I got to tax you because I want you to understand, as the assessor, the first source of truth is your signed SSP.
Got you. That makes sense.
Yeah. So let's go ahead and read this implementation statement that Jason wrote. The Department of Compliance at Infinity. Oh, this is your old SSP. This is not a recent one. So the Department of Infinity Security Solutions, right? So this is creates the audit and accountability policy, right? They create one, so they have one, and it is stored in the cloud, in the company cloud servers. The audit and accountability policy addresses purpose, scope, roles, responsibility, management commitment, coordination amongst entities, et cetera, et cetera. So he has made it quite clear that they have a policy and it has those sections in them. Okay, so now that we know what has been declared, Jason, now we go to that step of you actually doing the assessment, which you make a great point, which is I need to go get that document so I can review the contents of it. Okay. Mm-hmm. And I'm debating, do we want to, do you know where our audit policy is? Let's go ahead and pull that up, shall we?
For PJ Pros?
Yeah, do we have one? We have one, right? I mean, we have one that's, is it in draft mode? I can't tell.
Let me see.
Well, let me see if I can pull it up.
I think I got it right here.
Okay. If you have it, go ahead and pull it up. I don't mind sharing my audit policy with folks. Oh, that's it. No, that's a procedure. That's an audit procedure.
Oh, sorry.
Policy. The difference between a procedure document, the procedure is a step-by-step explanation of the policy, right? The policy says what you should do. The procedure should tell you, all right, in order to do those things, do step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4.
All right, one more minute.
I can pull it up. Who drafted the audit policy last? I don't remember.
It's pretty.
Oh, you found it. Good. Yeah, go ahead and just zoom in on that one document so that folks aren't straining their eyes. I know I have a big monitor here, so I don't want to take for granted that everybody else does. Right? Okay, so yeah, this is an old one, but that's fine. We'll use this one. Let's go to the table of content, please.
I'm there.
Right. So we got purpose, role. We got purpose, scope. It's missing a few things. I'm trying to see where the updated version. Okay.
You want to try to get an updated version?
I think I might have it. Hold on, I think I might have it. Yeah, so I see purpose and I see scope, right? If you recall, one of the things that should be in here is roles. Does it have roles in here? Let's do a quick search. And by the way, just because it says roles, it doesn't mean that there has to be a section there that says roles and responsibilities, right? It just needs to have something that addresses roles and responsibilities. Let's do a search for, oh, you did a search for roles. Very good, yeah.
So you got 2. An audible event?
Well, yeah, these are the events. This is not roles. I mean, roles and responsibilities as it pertains to the controlled family. Like who's responsible for what,
Yeah.
right? That's kind of what I'm looking for in this document. Right. I'm trying to find it. I think we may have not put roles on here. Let me go ahead and share my screen. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. So this is the updated version. You're working on this one. I saw it in the email. I know we're trying to push this one up for signature. And I'm looking, yeah, so this one's missing. Well, I guess it talks about roles and responsibility. The CISO does this, right? There could be an argument for that, right? You kind of have to read through the document. It doesn't have a specific, it would have been nice if it had a specific section that talks about it. It talks about the PGA Pros ISOs, right? So there are different roles that are being addressed here, right? There's an argument, right, can be made to say, hey, we talk about roles and responsibility. As an ISO, I could come back and say, hey, we do, right? And the SCA might say, well, you didn't, and then, you know, we have to kind of figure out who's more on the right side or has a stronger argument, to be quite frank with you. My preference here would have been to just squash the argument, just make a whole section that said roles and responsibilities. But I do feel like it does address it. What were the other sections that this document needs to address, Jason?
So that should be, so we got purpose, scope,
Purpose, we got
roles,
scope, roles,
responsibilities.
Yep, responsibilities, we talk about that.
Management commitment.
Management commitments, right? The CISO is part of the management, right? So we do talk about that. We do talk about security audit administration, right? So I do feel like we do talk about that. What else?
And the last two are coordination among organizational entities and compliance.
Coordination. Now you wrote this. Did you address coordination among organizational entities? Or did you updated this? Do you recall that part?
I believe so, but it's quite possible that belief could be incorrect. Okay.
So it's going to take time, right? It's going to take time to really go through it, right? It's the Jason and I are kind of fumbling on this, right? But because we need time to kind of sit down and read through this and make sure that we're addressing this. But Jason, as the ISO and the custodian of this document, and as a person that drafted the SSP, right? It's your job to make sure that those things are being addressed as it's being drafted. Is it kind of, are you seeing the link now?
Yes.
Right? Because the better of a job you do at that, and I know it's not ISO class, but the better job you do at that, the less hassle you're going to get from the assessor.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Makes sense to me.
Cool. Yeah, so let's go back as the assessor real quick. I hope you guys are following me with your imagination, right? As I'm reading through this, it might be hard for me to pull that information out, right? But we're going to say that we've, an hour and a half later, I've read through it and I've made sense of it and I've determined that all those sections are in fact there. Okay, let's just follow through with that. And the reality is just like this. You're not going to see a document that has all those sections spelled out for you. Some places might, some places might not. A lot of places I've seen do not, right? Well, let's go back to you, Jason, and share your screen with me on the SAR so we can continue.
All right. You got to stop sharing first.
You got to stop sharing? Damn.
And it wouldn't let me give you the 300 boot.
Okay. So back to our assessment objective, right? We've gone all around the world to find this document. We've checked the contents of it to say, hey, does it in fact have those sections? And in our scenario, we've determined that it does in fact have those sections, Jason. Let's go ahead and scroll to the right, please. All right, the next column is observation and evidence. This is a very important part that you need to draft, right? Observation, what did we observe and what evidence did we collect? Okay, guys, evidence, AKA artifacts, right? Did we collect during this assessment? What was the observation in this scenario, Jason? Well, we observed the audit policy. We'll say PJ Pros, right? We won't use the other SSP you wrote. We'll say PJ Pros, audit policies, what you observed, and you deemed that all the sections were in fact there. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to type today's date. So today is the day that you did your assessment. So 3/5/2023. Yep. And then we're going to write the time, 1:46 p.m. Eastern. Okay, let's do Alt Enter so you can start a new line. All right, so I'm gonna write, I'll just write and then you type, upon reviewing PJ Pros audit policy, it was determined that the document addresses purpose, scope, roles, responsibility, etc. All right, now start another line. Now we're going to reference the actual artifact or the evidence. Artifact, evidence, same difference in this world. We're going to reference it. Now the name of this document, Jason, is called Audit Policy _ version 2, V2. So just write audit _ policy _ V2 _ 2023 0115. There you go. That is the actual name, PDF. Yeah, we'll pretend it was a PDF, right? So you reference the date and time you did the assessment, you reference what your observation was, and you reference the actual evidence which you've collected. We're done with our observation. Now, I do want to make clear one thing, right? In this case, we simply copied over the content, which is the purpose, scope, roles. This is a very rare occasion. If you were doing something that requires, that you can be more specific in, you should. This one, I think you can get away with because it's so common. You see a lot of this question being asked of other documents. And in other examples that we're going to do, we will make more attempt to be more specific, but this one was a fairly simple one. Let's go to the right, please. All right, implementation status. What are our options for implementation status? Oh, not that drop down. Do the other one. Yep, no, yep, that one. So what do you think? Was it implemented, partially, planned based on the scenario we just explained?
Based on what we just explained, implemented.
Yeah, it was implemented. And the assessment result, what are the options? We only have two options, satisfied or other than satisfied. What do you think, Jason, based on the scenario?
And we can be satisfied.
Satisfied, yeah. So go ahead and click on that when you're ready.
Yep.
All right, now, identified risk. There's no risk because it is a satisfied control, right? So we don't have a risk to identify. Likelihood level is talking about the likelihood of that risk happening. We don't have a risk, so we'll leave that blank as well.
So we don't have to type anything like none or NA. If it doesn't apply, just leave it blank.
Yep, just leave it blank. Yeah. And the impact level, the impact of the risk, if it were to happen, and then risk exposure pretty much populates itself. And we'll go through an example of a risk that is other than satisfied, so we can talk about risk. We'll probably end up doing that tomorrow because I know we're running short on time for today. And then the risk statement is pretty much an explanation of that risk that you are exposed to. And then we'll go to the, one more to the right. And the recommendation for mitigation. Again, if it was other than satisfied, you need to have your recommendation on how you want to fix the issue. And then SSP implementation statement differential means that, hey, the SSP is written wrong. So the ISO needs to go back and fix that statement because it's incorrect. If there's nothing that needs to be fixed on the SSP for this control requirement, then you skip it. And the assessor POC, in this case, will be you, Jason, so then you just put your name on it. Right? And then prior assessment results. If this is a second year SAR, you will talk about if it was satisfied or other than satisfied in the previous year. And prior risk exposure level, you talk about the prior risk level, right? If this is the first, then you just leave it blank. So in this case, we'll say this is the first SAR, so we'll leave it all blank. But I hope that my explanation of each column makes sense. Does anyone have any questions about any of the columns that I've just described? Okay. All right. So let's go through another example. It's 1:51 now. We have about 10 minutes. So I'm going to go through another satisfied control. When we come back on Tuesday, I'm going to go over a control that was as many controls as we can, but certainly we'll make sure that we go through one that's other than satisfied so that we can talk about the risk. Okay. Jason, dealer's choice. Pick a control, any control. Preferably not something in AU1 because I want us to have more of.
Can we do SA, please?
Who's that?
Rahel?
Hello?
Was that right? I want to share a screen so we can go through SA.
I don't think I can share my screen.
That's fine, but you're gonna stay on the mic, right?
Yes.
So SA.
It's only fair, right, Jason?
Yeah.
Jason can help, you know.
All right. SA what?
Yeah, this is fine. SA1.
Can we do something other than a one control? And the reason why I'm asking is because the SA1 control talk about the same thing. They talk about the policy and the procedure.
Okay, like 4.
SA4? All right. Go ahead and zoom in when you're ready, Jason.
All right. So just regular 4 or 4, 1, 4 more.
Yeah, which procedure are we talking about, Rael? Or you can just pick a random one.
You mean the number? Or what?
Yeah, there's more than 1 4. There's SA41, 42, 43. Well, 411, 412. There's a bunch of 4s.
Okay, we can do 1. I'm not sure. I don't have my SSP.
Okay. All right. Well, we have about 7 minutes left. SA41 is quite an earful. So, I mean, we could do it and see how far we get. Let's see if this one has have a shorter assessment objective, shall we? Jason, scroll down a little bit, if you don't mind. All right. How about this one? SA411. Okay.
Okay.
Now, this is a control enhancement. I forgot who asked me earlier, but SA41 basically enhances a question that was asked in the previous SA4, right? And SA42 is another enhancement of SA4, right? So those are the enhancement that I think it was Johnson that was asked about that earlier. All right, so let's go ahead and the first step to writing your implementation statement is to first read and make sense of the assessment objective. So let's read it real quick. It says, and by the way, before you even read the objective, look at the control family and ask yourself, what is this control family about? The one we read about earlier talks about audited, right? Which is pretty much monitor the network. This one's talking about acquisition, functional acquisition process, functional properties of security control. What does acquisition mean to you, Jason or Rael? When we say acquisition, what does that mean to you?
Gaining possession or control.
Yeah, gaining possession, acquiring things. In the world of security, it usually means buying things.
Yep.
Right. The SA control family is about purchasing and making sure that security is incorporated in the purchase of things that you are buying for the organization, especially when it comes to information systems. So understanding the control name and understanding the theme of the control family helps you to zoom your lenses on how you're thinking about the control. right? Now it no longer becomes a widespread anything. It just talks about purchasing and functional properties of security control. Like what are the functions, right, of those security control? Like is one function one way, is one for another function. All right. It's important that you have that back thought, right, before you start digging in. Okay. Now the assessment objective says, determine if the organization requires the developer.
I'm sorry.
Oh, you good. Determine, okay, yeah, so 411, just one more down. We'll be there. Yep. Determine if the organization requires the developer of the information system component, or information system services to provide a description of the functional properties of security controls to be employed. I could never be the host of Jeopardy because reading out loud is just like, whoa. All right, I'm digressing. So let's break this down. It's a lot of words, right? Some of y'all probably like, what the heck did I just read? So you got to break it down. You got to break it down to little chunks, right? Determine if the organization, in this case, PJ Pros, requires the developer of information system. What is a developer of information system? Someone that creates information system, like a system admin, or maybe a programmer, right? The developer, who develops this and who builds it, information system. System component is the same thing as information system. We're just talking about pieces of the information system, right? A laptop is a system component. A server is a system component. A firewall is a component of our system, right? It's the same thing as information system. I know. Why can't they just say information system and just get it over with? That's just NIST for you, right? So once again, require the developer, or the person that builds an information system, or the pieces of that information, or information system services. So we're not just talking about the actual system itself, but also the services for the system, right? We need to, are the developers of basically your IT, the people that develop your IT work, they're required to do what? Let's find out. Are they required to provide a description of functional properties of the security controls to be employed, right? Do they provide you with a description of the functional properties of security controls to be employed? So all they're simply asking is, when you develop an information system or a component of the system, when you develop IT stuff, do you at some point, before that thing goes into production, do you at some point have a description of the functional properties? Do you have a description of how those security controls are to be employed? Do you talk about the security parts of it? Do those developers provide a description of that as some way, somehow? They don't care how you do it. It just needs to be done, right? SAR controls is not everybody's favorite, I'll be honest with you, right? Because it forces you to think in ways of money and work, IT. And it's like, ugh, the two is like, they don't fit well. But you gotta kind of expand your mind and really try to grab hold of it. Basically, at the end of the day, I'm the developer of an information system. I'm somebody that built this on the network. Do I just build it, right? Do I build a server and just say, here you go, server's working? No. You know, in addition to make sure the server is working, I need to have a description of the security functions, right? Of what parts of it helps to enforce security controls. All right. Now, how does your organization do it? Every organization does it differently, right? The way that it should be done, ideally, and I'm not saying it's the only way that it should be done, before anything goes out into production, right? If we are developing something new, right? Before it goes out into production, there should be some type of a user manual, right? And in the user manual, right, that you build, that you have drafted, whoever developed it should have some type of a manual on how to use it. And before it is being used in production, part of that user manual should include the functional properties to say, hey, if you want to encrypt things, this is where you go to make sure that the encryption is turned on. If you want to make sure that, certain unsecure ports and protocols are not running, this is how it needs to be done, right? Do you, as a security control assessor, need to know all those things about, like, you know, how it's all done and where? No, you don't. But you need to make sure that the people that are developing the information system and information system services are certainly making or certainly writing those descriptions out somewhere. Step one, make sense of the assessment objective. Did that make some sense to you, Jason?
Yes.
Good. Now, Jason, let's say the SSP implementation statement was very vague. It gave you, all it said was, yes, we do require developers of the information system to write a description of the functional properties, because I've seen that happen before, and they give you no specifics. Mm-hmm. As a security control assessor, what do you do about that? What are you gonna ask your ISO?
You would move into a different, so examine may not be the way to test that. So you would get into an interview and ask how, or, you know, actual functional driven questions.
Yeah, so I'm the ISO, you're the SCA. What's your question to me? I wrote a really crappy implementation statement. What's your question to me?
I'd say I dig into deeper to what are the functional properties of the security controls that are employed for the system.
What are the functional properties of security controls that are employed? I don't know if I will frame it in that sense.
Okay.
Remember, you're walking into a situation where you don't know how much of anything is done. So I personally, because I don't know if anybody, if an ISO that's not reading this specific objective will be able to answer the question in that frame. Because I'd be like, functional properties of security controls to be employed. Like what? You know what I mean?
Okay.
What I would probably want, my advice to you and others is, I want to create a story. I want to make sense of it. So I need to figure out specifics of your organization. What I would probably first want to ask or figure out, if I don't know already, is who are the developers of the information system? Right? I probably want to know that part first. Who are the developers of the information system? Right? Who actually builds the system components? Who actually provide information system services? Does that make sense to you?
Yes.
Because now it helps me to dig into the specifics, right? So the developer of our information system, we have a couple of people, right? Timothy's one, right? Tala's another, right? He helped us develop our configuration management database. If I can get the damn thing to work, but right. So we have people that help us develop our system and system components, right? I, in fact, you know, roll my sleeve up and do some development work as well, right? So we are the people that do the development work, right? And my next question will probably be, well, how is it pushed out into production, right? My next question will probably be, how do we get this out into production? How is this released, right? How is this eventually used? I want to know, right? And I think you know how things are pushed out to production here, Jason, right? It goes through a change management procedure, right? Yep. Where the change is being submitted as a change request, right? By the developer or the requester of the change. And then once it's approved, that person gets to develop it. And then once they're done, they get to push forward for a change release. And after release, it is now in production, right? So now that I know how the developers get stuff out there and who they are, right? My next question is, how do you guys make sure that the security controls being employed are being described, right? How do we make sure, I'll probably, word in that sense, right? How do you guys make sure that the security controls for these things that are being developed, how do we make sure that it's being documented or being described, right? I probably won't even use the word functional properties because I know exactly what they're trying to ask, right? How do we know that those security controls are being documented or being described? So people know, how those security controls work.
Yep.
You see what I'm saying?
Yep.
So that'd be my third question, right? If I did not understand the assessment objective, I would not be able to ask the right questions, right? So everybody listening on the call, don't do yourself the disservice of asking questions blindly, right? Ask questions in the sense where it flows and it feels right. I hope that makes sense. You can think right out. She picked a rather difficult security control, right? For me to give you guys an example of. But we had a very easy one earlier, so I'm glad she picked one that's more difficult than the others, right? But you got to take it. You got to make sense of it, and then you have a conversation, and you say, "Hey, how do you do this? How do you do that?" Right? And your brain might think differently from mine, right? And Jason, I don't know if your questions would have led you to the right path, but if it leads you to the right path, it's correct, right? There's multiple ways you could break this down, right? So I can tell you one thing in our change request, and to answer my own question, right? In our organization, if you're going to develop something new, it needs to go through the change process. And then once it's going through the change process, right? When you submit the change, right, you are required to address the security controls, right, that are being applied to that, to whatever component that is, right? It's very important that you do that. And I'm giving you the answer here, Jason, if the information system or component that's being developed is a major one, the entire system needs to undergo system A&A, which is, RMF step 1 through 6, right? We need to run it through, like if it's a major feature enhancement. If it's just something small, then it can basically, go through the change request, make sure a security person, make sure all the security controls, pertinent security controls are documented within the change request. Does that make sense to you, Jason?
Yes.
You sure?
Yeah.
All right. Have I give you enough story to tell you how we meet this assessment objective?
I would say so. Yep.
Okay. All right. All right. So now looking to your right, according to FedRAMP, we have 3 options: examine, interview, test. They're telling us that we can do either of the 3 or a combination of the 3, right? I'm gonna let Jason sweat this one out, and I'm gonna ask Jason which one would he like to do, and to go ahead and write the objective based on the Q&A session we just had. Do you think you can do that, Jason?
I think that we are at a great stage for we.
Okay, all right. So let me ask you this then. Which one should we do, right? Based on everything I just told you, which one do you think we should do?
I mean, based on everything you just said, it seems as if the interview will suffice to.
The good old interview. And I love how to use the corporate word suffice. In the non-corporate word, I call it the easy way out. Right? To my future assessor, current assessor, don't do yourself the disservice of making interviews.
Okay.
Don't get in the habit of doing interviews. Why? Because anybody that knows security assessment, they know you're taking the easy way out. And if you have nothing but interviews, it makes people like me start to question the quality of your assessments. It's so easy for you to say, raise your right hand. I hereby attest that we run through a change request process and all developers must assign the security. Nah, man. I need you to show me, right? Where you can do a technical test, that should be your first option. If you're truly a really good assessor, challenge yourself to do a technical test. Challenge yourself to do a document as a secondary option. The last option that you should always try to go for is an interview. A really good security control assessor, in my opinion, will have more technical tests than anything. Okay. So, Jason, even though I asked you to pick one, I'm gonna say you can't pick that one. So between a technical test or a technical test, which one do you want to pick?
I'll go with technical test.
Nice. Good choice. So what technical evidence would you like, based on the scenario that I've told you about, what evidence would you like to see?
Sorry. Back over. So that's just technical evidence of a developer who
Right.
with a developed information system component, technical evidence of technical evidence of the processes to determine the security functions.
What process?
Organizational process.
What organizational process?
How does PJ Pros determine the system security function requirements?
Right. So based on the scenario that I've given you, what specifically from PJ Pros do you want to see?
I feel like if I say a document, that's more of an examination. Is that correct?
Sure. No, go for it. What document did you have in mind?
The SSP.
How will the SSP prove that we're compliant with this control?
Well, it would be a start to see what's in place, how things are categorized.
Yeah, but the SSP, unless it's part of the system description, you can't use the implementation statement as your evidence. Otherwise, you're just giving yourself an infinite loop.
Mm-hmm.
I see Taiwo has his hand up. Taiwo?
Taiwo for the lifeline.
No? Oh, wait a minute. Did I enable audio? I think you might have dialed in late. All right, Taiwo. I just gave you audio power.
Yeah, what's up, Paul? What's up, Jason? Yeah,
Hey.
I just wanted to chime in. You probably don't need to necessarily use the SSP. You could probably just use the SA policy and reference that as PJ Pros doing what they need to do as far as what policy will determine if, and then do the determine if statement for that particular one. Because this looks like you could just do examine for this one. I wouldn't have necessarily did the test step. I would have done the examine step.
I know, but I'm the option I've given him. I told him he can't do an examination.
Oh,
I want him
Paul,
to.
You push for testing way too much. I get it.
Yeah. Because here's the thing. Even if it's written in a statement in a document somewhere, right? It's your job to make sure that people are actually doing what they should be doing, right? And I've told. So I'll give you guys the answer. I've told you the scenario. The scenario is this. Right? He's asked me who our information developers are. So let's direct our eyes to the assessment objective. Who are the developers of the information system? I've told you, well, we got Timothy, we've got Tala, who helps do our application in-house. Timothy helps us with developing our cloud presence, right? And then myself, right? I do some of the development work as well for our information system and components, right? And then the second question was, well, how do you guys how do you guys run through? How does things get to production? How do things get released and become a part of the system, right? Because I want to know that in order to understand the assessment objective. And I've told him, right, that in order for things to become a part of our network, it needs to go through a change management process, right? They need to submit a change request. The developer needs to submit a change request. And then once it's been submitted, right, it needs to be reviewed by the change review board, and then make sure that everything in that change request needs to have security controls to be employed. It needs to be included, right, before it can be approved, right? Once it's approved, then it's being implemented, and that's where we describe those security controls for those system or system components. And I also asterisked it with this. I said, if it's a minor change or minor system component, it can go through that change request. But if it's a huge change, it needs to go through our system A&A altogether, right? That's the scenario. Now, if that scenario doesn't make sense, then we need to stop and make sure it makes sense, right? If it does make sense, I believe we have enough information to address the observation. Johnson, do you have something before I go ahead and give the observation? No? Okay. Yes, Joy. Yeah, you want to give it a try?
Yeah, but I'll probably use the examine and a combination of examine and interview. So you mentioned the people that you interviewed, and then you examine maybe the change request and the approval for the change request, and you just kind of go from there.
All right. So what? Okay. So let me note this down. What exactly are you looking for? You said you're going to look for a change request.
I'll look for the change request. I'm looking to see. Okay, let me look at looking to see what. Yeah. So I'm looking to make sure the system components are confirmed in the change request, and to see what services were provided. Just gonna make sure the assessment objective was met in the change request.
Right. And in this case, what is the assessment objective that you're looking for when you look at the change request?
Okay, so requires a developer, the system components, make sure that that's there. The information system, so I'll make sure it also shows the description of the functional properties. And you know, this will vary based on what the system component is. So I can't tell, I can't go into details right now, but
yeah, the functional properties of the security controls.
Yeah.
Right. Functional properties of the security controls, that's a key part. Like you understand what I mean by that, right? When I say functional property of the security controls, right? So where are those security controls, and what are the properties for them, right? Let me show you guys something real quick. I'm going to share my screen with you real quick. When they say functional properties, and you're definitely on the right track there, Joy. All right, so I'm gonna go to our Azure portal real quick, and I know we're running over time, but we're gonna tie this up real quick, right? There's one of the things on our network. This is PJ Pro's network, right? This is our cloud presence, right? This is where we manage a lot of our controls, right, guys? And one of the things that we enforce here is multi-factor authentication. Okay, so if I go to Azure Active Directory, right, this is the functional properties. Where do I go for it, right? Azure Active. If I click on Azure Active Directory, right, this is a property this is a functional property. And if I go scroll down and I go to security, right, and if I actually go to multi-factor authentication, okay, this menu here is where I can effectively discuss or list. I'm sorry, no, wait, I'm going to the wrong place here. Let me go back here. If I go to, I'm sorry, wait a minute, bear with me here. Not there. If I go to security once more, if I go to conditional access, okay, and MFA requirement, this is a policy that basically allows me to indicate multi-factor authentication requirements, okay? And here it says all users included, right? And specific users excluded, right? So this is effectively, this is the functional properties. MFA is a security control. It's under the IAA security control family. This is the functional property where I can effectively secure multi-factor authentication, right? Which is a security control, right? Before Azure is released, it should be, the description should be somewhere that talks about this functional properties, because this is the functional property that allows me to effectively enforce a security control. Does this visual help a little bit?
It does, but how do we run the test though? Using the
right. So let's go back to to your screen, Jason.
All right.
Right.
All right. Go ahead and stop sharing. Edit.
Yes. I'm sorry, I forgot to stop sharing. So what Joyce said, I mean, the stuff that Joyce was put together, I will agree with that. That is definitely a good package to put together, right? Getting the change request, right? And finding the section in the change request form that actually talks about the security controls, right, for the functional, for that, looking at the change request that actually talks about the security controls to be employed, basically, right, and describing the functional properties of it, right? That certainly will be a great observation, right? Now, I will agree with you, Taiwo. It might be a little bit too extra in this case, not all cases. It might be a little bit too extra if you say, when is your next change request review board meeting, right? And to say, hey, I want to sit in on that meeting and I want to see how things are being passed along, right? And that would be a little bit extra, right? It might look at you like you take your job a little too seriously, right? So I will definitely concede to that and say that Joy, you know, the stuff that she put together, it makes sense, right? It makes sense to put that together. But let's say that you, Jason, you decide to join a change review meeting, right? And witness an actual change being submitted, right? And you actually see where those security controls are being described, right? And then you see it being processed and being approved, right? And sent, right, through the wire. Let's go ahead and write the observation for that.
All right.
Okay, and the date is 3/5/2023 at 2:21 p.m. Eastern time. Okay, so how do we write that, right? I don't know, which one do we want to do? We could probably do, examination and the technical test. And then also, let's not also forget about not just information system component, but also the information system, right? We still need to prove that part as well, because we're not talking about just the component, we're talking about the system itself, right? So if there's something that needs to be done with the actual system, as I mentioned before, it needs to undergo a full system ANA, right? But for the first part, right, for the information system component, we can go ahead and write that out. And in this case, we're talking about after, we can just write this down, after attending, upon attending a PJ Pros change review meeting, it was determined that a change request was submitted before a system component can be released into production. Period. That change request had a field that described security controls to be implemented and the system components that met the required function. All right, period. All right, so that takes care of that first part. Now we're talking about the other part, which is the, so let's go and do it. Actually, you know what? Hold on, hold that thought. For the actual information system itself, right? It needs a whole new system ANA. Well, what is the evidence that proves that a whole new system ANA is required? We have, and that's why you have to do some digging down. Now this one, because we've never had that happen to us before, right? There's no way to really technically test that, right? So we have to really rely on some type of policy for that, in my mind, right? And feel free to rebuttal and tell me otherwise, if you can think of a way. But in my mind, this is something that I have to use a document for. We do have a document called Information System Continuous Monitoring Policy, right? So let's start a new line. Per the Information System Security, Information System Continuous Monitoring Policy. If there is a major system update being developed, a new comma, I guess, a system ANA will need to be completed. Done. Right. So now we're mixing, a policy document. We're mixing something that you actually witnessed right? We also might even want to throw in that CR, like Joy said, right? We want to throw in that change request that shows maybe a screenshot of the change request that shows the checkbox for those security controls being described, right? And then we also have information system services, right? And what they're asking is developer of information system services. It needs to talk about the security controls, right? Now, a service is really, how do we hire people? How do we contract people out, right? When we purchase services from people, right? And I'll tell you at PJ Pros for information system services, right? Before we can have those being acquired, right? There has to be a section within the good Lord, within the contract, we'll call it a contract, where certain security requirements for those service providers have to be listed, right? So let's say, I'm not going to pull up any contracts here, but let's say that we pull up you ask for the contract and you read the contract, and there's a section there that says that, hey, these are the security requirements for this position, right? Or this contract, this information security system, this information system service. These are the security requirements for it, right? We need to make sure, how do we make sure that that is being addressed, right? How do we make sure that this is being addressed all the time? It's not something that we do necessarily, but the best way to do that is really to make sure that there are contract templates being used, right? If we have contract templates in place and everyone and all the people that, our contracting officers have to use that template, there needs to be a section for information security service. Does that make sense to you, Jason?
Yes.
Right. Again, this is not the way to comply with this control, but it is a way to make sure that we're complying with the control. Right. So let's start a new line.
All right.
So upon review of the PJ Pros information system service contract, it was determined that contract template. It was determined that the template includes a section to describe security controls. To describe security requirements that must be met by service providers, right? This actually is not something that we do, but we should have it, right? But we're going to pretend that we do it, right? Because I don't want to overcomplicate this. I think it's already complicated enough, right? So there are three parts. Let's go back to the assessment objective real quick.
All right.
All right. So again, the assessment objective is asking, when you develop an information system, the whole system, a component, a piece of the system, or a service, right? Do you provide a description of the functional properties of the security controls? In case you have forgotten what the assessment objective is, because we kind of got caught up in the weeds, right? And in order to prove that, we block it out into three parts, right? We talk about a component, which is through a change management process. We talked about the system itself, which requires a whole system A&A. And we talked about system services, which is we make sure we include it in the contract language. Okay, those are the ways that we've done it, right? As the assessor, you should know to ask about those three things, right? If the first answer only answer about system components, well, you know that they have not answered about system services, information system and system services. So you need to ask, okay, you told me about the components. Those are components, because the whole change request is about components. What about the entire system? What about your system services? That doesn't go through change request. You need to uncover those things, right? Essays are a little bit tricky, again, because they mix a lot of building and purchasing things with security. So it's really hard to wrap your mind around how it's done. But the good news is, as an assessor, it's really the ISO job to tell you how it's done. But it's your job to call BS when they're just throwing stuff at you, or they just want to have an interview, right? Again, I've seen places where they will write, system and service acquisition policy proves that the developer of information system component or information services have to provide a description. You could easily do that. But is it really being done? Is it, or is it not? Right? As one of the better assessors, you should really make sure that they're doing it, because otherwise, I mean, that's essentially your job, to make sure that it's being done. If I've seen security assessment reports where people simply just write literally the first sentence, systems and service acquisition policy, and then copy and paste the bottom half of that assessment objective, yes, I have. And does it go through accreditation? Yes, it does, right? But the big question is, do you want to have it done right with quality, or do you just want to get it through, right? That, I can't answer that for you guys, right? But if you really want to do it, you want to make sure that you make sense of the objective and you're actually answering, right? And providing evidence that is strong enough to say that it's being done.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Does that, I mean, I hope I didn't lose anybody. I hope that I've guided you guys right in terms of how to think. Always lean on a technical test, right? If you want to be the G of all assessors, lean on a technical test. Don't just opt for an interview, right? And if this, and if the organization just simply don't have a way to give you an evidence, then yeah, then you go for the interview, and we'll do an example of an interview in our next class. Then you go for the interview, but don't be the assessor. I don't recommend you are the assessor that has interviews up and down your security assessment report. I'll tell you one thing, I don't allow it. I mean, there's a lot of places that
true.
do.
He doesn't.
There's a lot of places that do. You could get away with it, right? But for real quality, I think you should get yourself to that level where you can, run a technical test on just about anything.
Hey, Paul, I have a question though. Is there? So let's say we're assessing like, I don't know, 50 controls or whatever. Can I have like 2 or 3 or maybe 10 interviews? The rest be technical interview?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. Of course, you can have interviews, but save them for like the ones that is just, save them for the ones that you're just having difficulty getting evidence for. You know what I mean? Don't just default to it, because trust me, I mean, you get a reputation everywhere you go. You want a reputation as a thorough assessor. You don't want a reputation as someone that just gets by. I mean, and a lot of people make a career out of getting by. Don't get me wrong. I just, and Ty already knows, right? If you're in that circle, and you've been in our program, the expectation is you want to be the best, right? With mediocrity is not accepted. So, because we want to wear our patch proudly. So, it's just it's just the mantra. So I hope everybody catch the bug, right? Because we want to represent.
Yep.
Okay.
This has been good for my thought process and just kind of, cycling through priority order.
I'm sorry, say that again, Jason.
It's been good for my thought process and and just how to cycle through priority order between the 3 options, if given all 3.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And again, the key part and is make sense of the objective, not to the point where, I understand the language being used and I can tell you the definition, but can you imagine what they mean?
Mm-hmm.
Can you imagine what it might take to meet that requirement? As an ISO and as a security control assessor, if you can't do that, you need to stop and you need to practice that skill. Right. And it's a major skill to have. And it's a major skill that a lot of people don't have necessarily, but it is the key to becoming a really good assessor. Right. Okay. All right. Sorry, guys. I know we went way over today. On Tuesday, we are going to be going over more security controls. If you got some that you want to do, I'd love to hear about it. Ping me ahead of time. I'd love to go over it. If you ping me ahead of time, you get yourself in the front line and we get to go over it. Just don't ask Rael to pick one anymore because she picks the ones that are really hard. But Tuesday, we're going to go over more security control. And on Wednesday, we're actually going to go over POAM reports, right? So more to come on that. Hope you guys are learning from this webinar series. I'm going to open up the next few minutes for questions and answer. If you feel like you need to dial out, I know it's Sunday, it's a beautiful day out there. So Make sure you get you some vitamin D, right? I definitely need to get some and go outside today. But yeah, any questions, comments, concerns from the audience? I think everybody has mic active.
I got questions.
All right. Give me like 4 seconds, Taiwo. We'll see if anybody else have any questions. Not that your question's not important. I just want to make sure other people have time.
No, you're good. You're good.
Oh, that's it. Taiwo, you're up. What's your question?
All right. So first question: what is the best tool outside of becoming a penetration tester to become a good technical control assessor? Because even I've been doing interviews lately, and one thing I found out is there's 2 tiers of assessors. There's a security control assessor who just does regular assessments, like, reviewing documentation, all that good stuff. And then you have the technical assessor who actually physically test the controls, test the firewall, test the boundaries.
Pen testers.
Like what? So you do have to be a pen tester to be a technical control assessor.
You should be. You should be a decent pen tester. You should know you should know how to work things like vulnerability scanners. You should have about like 3 tools that you know how to use very well, 3 security tools that you know how to use very well, and maybe 3 more that you know how to use fairly well, right, under your belt.
So I don't necessarily have to call myself a pen tester. If I know how to use Nexus Scanner, different scanning tools and all that good stuff.
Scanning tools is definitely your number one. Auditing tool is another good one, right? Maybe Splunk or Azure Monitoring or CrowdStrike, and then maybe like a IPS, intrusion prevention system. If you know how to use maybe a firewall or 2, right? Like Sonic Wall or Palo Alto, something like that, right? When you know how to use those tools, they really help you to visualize and understand what these controls are really looking for. Yeah.
Okay. So, you still offer those in your in the last part of your program, right?
Yeah, of course, yeah.
Yeah, B, we gotta talk. We gotta catch up when you got a second.
Okay, yeah, for sure, man, for sure. Yeah, you want to and then also doing offensive security helps. Like hack something, it's very easy. Our website.
You say that, man, but
it's time consuming.
Yeah,
I didn't say it does take time, but it's pretty easy. I mean, you just start off with I've got videos on my website. If you don't like the website, go to Udemy. Go to there's a lot of different websites, golly, that you can learn how to just create stuff. You know what I mean? And I think the key part is a lot of people start the process of copying. And there's nothing wrong with copying. Maybe in the beginning, copy, but at a certain point, you got to stop tracing, and you got to ask yourself, why am I making this move? Why am I making that move? You know what I'm saying? Take the time to really feel. I like to use the word feel. If you're not feeling what you're doing, and you've been doing it for a while, stop. Don't do anything else and start feeling what you're doing, right? Like I could tell you the directions to get to my house, but the GPS sucks sometimes and it doesn't take you directly in front of my house. And I've seen 2 different types of Uber. If I ever catch an Uber, the one that stops in the middle of the street and says, "Where are you at?" And the ones that try to make sense of, okay, they put me here. That means I need to go inside the complex, not stand outside of it. You know what I mean? So you got to feel what it is that you're doing, right? You can ask the right questions as well. It's sort of it's an art to it. Jones.
So how many security control would you say you will need to do an interview that you fairly need to like really have in the back to when you go to interview if they ask you about which security controls do you know?
The O1 controls for sure. For those that didn't hear his question, he's asking how many security controls do you need to know off the top? Are you talking about like memorize or just know or have experience with?
I guess memorize, because we're not really fairly knowledgeable of knowing exactly how the control works, but you're looking for a job, so you want to be able to express yourself when you're in an interview.
Right. So I say the O1 controls, you should know it, right? Because everybody knows the O1 controls talks about policy, procedures, dissemination, reviews and updates, etc. Right? They're all the same. So if you've done System A enough times, you should know an O1 control, right? I will also say this. I always encourage people to push back because I've heard of interviews where people are like, so AC10, tell me, what is that control requirement? That's dumb, right? I've been doing this for a long time, a really long time, right? I don't memorize security control, nor do I even try to memorize security control. So I've never had a real life situation where I need to memorize it. And what I always advise people to do, if you're stuck in an interview and there's an, no offense, what I think is an ignorant interviewer asking you to memorize random security controls, you need to tell them, hey, listen, if you tell me the implementation statements, I can tell you exactly how I will arrive at if you tell me the control requirements, I can tell you exactly how I will arrive at the implementation statement, but I don't spend the time to memorize security controls because I always have access to them. There's no need for it. You know what I'm saying? So I've heard stories, and I think I wish the people that are doing that would not do that because it's really a waste of time, in my personal opinion. But I will say this, right? If you've done enough controls and you don't know what an O1 control is, chances are you've never opened a NIST 853, right? So that would be a tell, right? And yeah, there's those like AC2, right, which you've probably seen before. But really and truthfully, I tell people don't entertain that. Don't entertain it. Just tell them, hey, look, I don't spend time memorizing controls, but I can break one down for you. Just give me a control requirement, and I'll break it all down for you, just like we just did today. Hope that helps.
Yeah, that did help but I think that's really that type of question is basically a test because nobody's gonna really remember 300 and something controls.
Yeah. Oh, you said someone gave you that question?
No, nobody asked me that question, but it sounded like I like the way you just answered that question.
Yeah.
Because I was trying to memorize a lot of controls.
No.
Right. And but I like the way you answered that question that, okay, tell me, let's look at the controls and then let's break it down so we can find exactly what the control does instead of like, oh yeah.
Yeah. And I will say this though, if you're, definitely in the market, do controls, right? Do them a lot, right? Do a crap load of them, right? Anybody who's been in my program will know that I make them do a lot, right? Because you need the practice, right? And you should be getting as much practice as possible. But yeah, don't sweat yourself. I don't memorize anything in IT. I only memorize by accident. So don't force yourself to do it. I have no issue going into a job interview and saying, I'm sorry, I don't remember that, right? Because you have so much more to compensate because you prepared so well that you can compensate and throw other things at them. And I find that to be effective enough for me. Woodson, question?
Yes. So when you say like do controls, is there a certain way you go find the policy and procedures of a system like this to get practice?
That's a great question. It's actually something I've been thinking about doing and just posting policies and procedures, having a publicly accessible documentation library, right? Because I guess it helps people sometimes. But to be honest with you, Woodson, you probably don't even need to ever see a policy and a procedure ever to really do controls because you can use your imagination and say, hey, this has been done or that's been done. You know what I'm saying? Instead of actually putting up like the audit policy, we're looking for purpose scope roles. You can use your imagination and say that, hey, I looked through it and I saw a section for this, a section for that, a section for this, right? Okay. It does help to have them. And if you absolutely need them, Google one. I can promise you, every single security control family, you can Google a security control policy or procedure that coincides with it, right? You just have to kind of know the trick of the trade. Like the IA control, identity, good Lord, identity. See, I told you guys, I don't remember.
Identification and authorization.
Yeah, there we go. See, I told you, I don't memorize anything. I've been doing this for a while. So, that's
I got you.
Right there. And I'm not ashamed to say that, right? So that control talks a lot about access, right? And so the AC control talks about access. So in my organization, I mix them together. Every organization I've ever been to, I mix them. This access control policy addresses the AC controls and the IA controls, right? So I don't need to make two different documents, right? And I say this to you, Woodson, because if you're looking for like, hey, I'm looking for this specific name, don't look for a specific name. Look for, understand what the control family is about, and look for a policy that addresses that control, control theme, you know what I mean? But there's lots of it. Like I'm looking online now, like you just type, let me see if I can share my screen real quick. Like if I'm looking for an access control policy, you guys see my screen?
Yes.
Right. So Google hacking is a fun thing to do, right? So I want an access control policy, and I want more than likely to be in a PDF form. So I'm going to type PDF, and I'm going to press enter, right? And they'll give me everything in PDF, right? So CA is like a California government. Look at it. They have that. They probably shouldn't, but they have the access control policy posted online. I can just pull that up. And I can just pretend this is my my system that I want to do a system ANA for, right? So they got all sorts of stuff here. Look at that. Boom, done, right? If I want to audit policy, I can do the same, pull it up. Did that help a little bit?
Yes, absolutely.
All right. And I mean, not all policies are created equally. This one looks a little bit short on words, but it might cover everything. You never know. You have to read through it. Right, and you can use this and say, "Hey, does it have this? Does it have that?" And as you're reading through as you're doing your assessment, you could actually, make a actual system ANA for it. Shoot, even send it to them. They might like it so much they hire you. I'm just kidding. They might. Who knows? You got to think outside the box.
Absolutely.
All right. Any other question, Taiwo? Nope. Okay. All right, guys.
I'm gonna call you later.
Question.
Oh yeah, sure.
I have another.
Jones, what's up, man?
Yeah. So, how many different types of jobs? How would you break it down? Like, I'm thinking the types of jobs out there it's like assessment, the implementation, and the POAM. Is there other types of jobs that you can do in this field? Because I know we don't categorize or select the security controls.
Right.
So it's not a job it's not part of the job. So that's why I was asking that question.
Yeah. Oh gosh, yeah. Security control assessor are just as important as an ISO, because what you just described is an ISO's like, right? You categorize RMF step 1, 2, and 3. You categorize the system. You draft your select your security controls. You draft your SSP, right? You write your implementation statement, and you hand off to the security control assessor, which is another job, which is what this webinar is about, right? I love Indeed. I think they do a great job of giving you jobs, posting jobs on here, right? So I go to Indeed.com, right? And I'm just gonna type SCA, right? I put it within a certain zip code, and oops, maybe SCA is not the best description, right? So I'm going to say security control assessor, right? Let's look for that. Look at that, information security officer. So this is more on the earlier part. Cloud security assessor, right? That's a good one, right? This is for cloud system security engineer compliance assessor, right? That's another good one, right? So there's definitely different jobs here, right? Federal security control assessor. Let's read about this one real quick. What are they looking for? What are they looking for? Create and own security artifacts. Remember what that is? Evidence. Remember what I told you guys earlier today? Those are the evidence, such as SSP. I don't know who wrote this, but I mean, they are artifacts, but they could have used a different artifact. But anyways, security control assessor is responsible for updating the POAM as well, right? So they put that in there. Create and develop ATO package for technology offering, proposed system, ensure system are compliant with proper security policies, right? Basically reviewing documents, what we just did today. Review and interpret network vulnerability scans, right? This is something that Timothy's kind of spoke on, right? Do I need to run the Nessus? Sometimes you do. Remember last class I told you guys, sometimes you run the Nessus. Sometimes you just get the report. Either way, can you review and interpret it, right? That's important. Lead ongoing control analysis, right? Lead network application vulnerability review meetings. right? So, you know, these are things that this job wants you to learn. And these are things that is easily achievable, in my opinion, right? Easily achievable, in my opinion. So, yeah, there's definitely plenty of job. So, you know, it's another assessor job, assessor. It just keeps going on and on, right? Especially in the DC area. And I'm sure there's other areas as well.
I guess another question is, do you in your program, do you assess who's ready to look for a job, or the person have to feel confident, or you know, how would you know somebody's ready to start their resume or look for a job?
Yeah, so you know, with us, I mean, one thing that I do personally is I try to keep it 100, right? I'm giving you guys real. We're not doing. I mean, we'll do a fake system when you first start, right? But I'm throwing you guys to do real systems. Like what Jason is doing now, he's doing a real system. You're literally an intern with us from day one because we give you real work. However, I have to give you guys grades because I'm not giving you a paycheck, right? So I have to give you guys grades, and the grade requirement is at 80%. 80% means I haven't fired you yet, right? Essentially. So if you're doing what you need to do, you'll keep that 80%. So the 80% benchmark is what I require, right? And I certainly require you to have gone through at least one full system A&A, right? I require you to go through continuous monitoring progress, right? You're gonna work on our SOC team, doing incident response and things of that nature. So you are required to have that technical aspect as well as the documentation aspect of things before you really have that well-rounded understanding. And once you're done, and this is about at least 6 to 9 months, right? It takes this process to bake, because anybody that tells you they can turn you into a well-ready security analyst in 6 weeks, 1 month, 3 weeks is a lie. Like, your brain doesn't work that way, right? I mean, sure, you can get away with that. Some people be successful in that path.
Daddy, why did you got to?
And so I've seen people that do that path. It's just with us, to kind of over answer your question, Jones, we require that 6 to 9 month process for you to fully bake and have the confidence you need and have that time to really gather the experience that you need. And then if you have excelled and meet that mark, then I say, okay, let's start looking for jobs, right? I mean, hopefully we have something in house which can make money. I've partnered with students in the past, and then but obviously us being a very small business, we don't really have the financial bottom. Otherwise, I love to keep a lot of people. Just can't keep them all, right? So what we do is, we definitely help you guys and give you guys the recommendations that you want to get the jobs out there. I hope I've at least answered your questions. I feel like I might have over answered it.
Yeah, you did, because I kind of understand, because I think, basically I understand the categorized step. I understand selective security, the implementation, watch your videos. So you kind